The case in relation to birth registration and whether children who are not registered, whose births are not registered, and who don't have any document in relation to their identity, we had to litigate the case because these children were not being allowed to enter into schools. So there are regulations under the Schools Act that said that every child must have a birth certificate or a passport or some identifying document to be able to then have access to a school. And the challenge with that, was that firstly we have children who are born to a South African parent and a non-South African parent, and there were barriers to registering those children because Department of Home Affairs would say if the parent who's a non-South African is in the country illegally, they will not allow the registration of the child. So we would then fight to say no, but they get their citizenship through the parent who's a citizen, so you must still be able to register them. And then there are also South African children who have both parents as being South African, but there are barriers to the birth registration because maybe the parents themselves were never registered. So before you can register your child, then you have to go back and sort out the parents' status and their registration first before you can register the children. So we try to kind of interlink the case for education together with the barriers to access to birth registration to say, well, if you have a system that does not really enable birth registration in a simplified manner, you cannot then, where children are not registered, use that to keep them out of schools. Yeah, so I mean, also that in that area, it's also a big issue about protecting children's origin. So the longer you take to register a child's birth, the more difficult. And children are then being denied identity, information about their origins, and then they potentially can become stateless. Also, by going to court and actually saying the right to access to education should not be limited because of the issue of status, but also making it very clear in the papers that the evidence that was there showed that most children who were not registered and who were in the schools were South African and not foreigners, as there was the thinking that it was non-South African children who were clogging up our system and are not registered. So we showed that in that case that was not the case, in particular because out of the about 1 million children at that point, only about 100 and something thousand were children who you could say are non-South Africans. The rest could not be registered, but they are South African children. And the court found that, yes, you cannot also use immigration laws to deny children the right to education. The two issues must be separated. And then it required that the state must then inform all the schools that children must be allowed into schools without papers.